joining us for our final episode of this series of Law in Life. Today we will be talking about what you need to know and what you should be thinking about when you are working with a lawyer. I would like to start by acknowledging the Darkin young people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging. I have got three of my favourite people here with me today, colleagues from Aubrey Brown Lawyers. I'm joined by Nick Coffell. Nick, he's one of the directors of Aubrey Brown Lawyers and he's also the team leader of our commercial law team. I'm also joined by Sharnie Leith. Sharnie is the team leader of our litigation team. And finally, I'm joined by Ben Hughes. Ben is one of our very special team members because Ben started with us when he first finished high school. So we've had the absolute pleasure of watching Ben develop as he has been studying law and working full time with us, through to being admitted as a lawyer, and now as he is moving through the early stages of his legal career. So thank you all for joining me.
Thanks, Anna.
Great to be here.
Why did he get such a long introduction?
Because Ben's
We're not
just
special.
Oh, he is special. So I'd like to start. I'm going to start with you, Ben. Why did you become a lawyer?
Well, I first developed an interest in the law when I was going through high school, studying legal studies. I was interested in how it worked and how it had so many limbs and elements to it. I also had a general interest and enjoyment in trying to work out problems and solve problems in various formats. In relation to that combined with the fact that obviously wanted to help people in some way, I thought that being a lawyer would be something that ticks all those boxes and seems like a pretty good fit for me when I was leaving school.
And how, now that you're actually working as a lawyer, how different is that to what you expected when you're at school thinking about it as a career?
I think the thing that really gets underappreciated is the amount of background work that goes into things. It's not all glitz and glamour and standing up before a judge with fancy words and trying to convince them of your best argument in a fancy suit. There's a lot of background preparation, analysis and research that goes into it that often doesn't get considered if you don't have the experience in working in a law firm. That I think was the main one. Plus obviously there's lots of pressures to make sure that you deliver advice and provide the best outcome from your client that you can, which is obviously also something that maybe not be considered while I was going through school.
Sharnie, why did you become a lawyer?
I'm exactly the same as Ben. Studied legal studies in Year 12, liked it, I was good at it, so I continued on. I started finance, that was my first degree, and then moved into law. I started working in stockbroking and found that it probably wasn't my ultimate interest, so I went back to study law.
I never knew that. Did you know she was a stockbroker?
Now that she says it, I vaguely remember it when I interviewed her for a job like 20 years ago.
Stockbroking is probably on the higher scale of what I was actually doing, but I was working at ComSec and I was buying and selling shares on other people's behalf.
It does explain a lot.
And what do you enjoy or what makes you continue practicing law?
The intellectual stimulation, definitely. So every matter, like they follow the same process, most matters, but every matter is different, the set of facts. It's a different approach. It's the challenge, the intellectual challenge, definitely.
And I think that in the area of law that you and Ben practice in, you're constantly having to learn about different things. I remember you guys recently having to upskill on artificial insemination of horses.
Yes, we get some very interesting matters with some interesting facts.
Yeah, no, terrific. And Nick, I've never asked you this question. Why did you become a lawyer?
Well, the answer's a doozy. Strap in. I fell into it different to Ben, different to Sharnie. I had no interest in law growing up. Never did it in school. Had finished school, was trying to surf as much as I could and my dad said, get a job. And so I put my finger on an advert which was an office junior in a law firm in Sydney. They accepted me, and I went from there. I started working as an office junior. They sort of said, do you want to study law? I said, this is all right, and did, and here I am now.
Fantastic. And it's interesting because we've got a few younger people working with us who have come into our organisation in a junior role and now, okay, I actually don't mind this, and we've encouraged them and they have started to study law. Now that you're actually a lawyer, what do you enjoy about the job? Why do you still do it? Apart from the fact that it pays more than surfing.
It does, yeah.
Probably substantially more.
Substantially more.
Skill as a
Considering my skill base as a surfer, it's been a sort of a slow burn in terms of appreciating what a lawyer does, but it's good to have been working full time whilst I studied. Sort of that, try before you buy. I know a lot of young people who've studied law and maybe never worked in a law firm come into the practice of law and say, this is not for me. So I think I was kind of fortunate in having to, or having been exposed to it from day one whilst I studied. So gaining the sort of the knowledge as well as the practical application of it. I really enjoy, I do different sort of work to Sharnie and Ben. I do transactional work. So again, very process orientated, but the spice is each process or each matter is slightly different with challenges along the way, which means that you've got to constantly think and problem solve, and interact with clients and make sure they're aware of what you're doing for them, which is a challenge sometimes, but something that I love.
And I'm like you. I was a reluctant law student. I had my career mapped to go to Macquarie Uni and study archaeology, and I did work experience at Albury Brown when I was in Year 12, and they rang up and said, would you like to come and work with us next year and study law? And I said no, and my dad was horrified. That's a real job. Archaeology is not a real job. You are not going to go and So anyway, so he very much, I was 17 and what Dad said happened. So I was very reluctant, and for the first couple of years working and studying, I resisted it and it was in a mindset of I don't want to do this. But then I started to enjoy it. And for me now, the thing that I really, really enjoy, I really enjoy mentoring and working with the younger lawyers. And I take a great deal of pride in seeing them progress and seeing them grow. And we've had lots of fantastic people come through our practice. We've had people move on to become magistrates. We've been a bit of a barrister factory. We've had quite a few go to the bar over recent years. We've had some who have gone overseas and pursued their career internationally. And I really enjoy being a part of that journey with them. But the other thing for me now is I personally love business, and not just the practice of law as a business lawyer, but I love business itself. And so I think of myself as a business person who just happens to be in the business of law.
Yeah, I think where I'm at the stage with my career as well, where I think I could have probably never gone to university and learned that sort of the books, and I'd still be at the same stage where I am in terms of my knowledge, in terms of having learnt all that stuff along the way. You're probably not there yet, but it seemed just something that slowly grew on me, which is I don't consider myself a lawyer anymore in terms of, I am, but I am, I promise.
It's that life experience.
Life experience, yeah.
And Sharnie, Ben's told us about what he found was different between his expectations when he was at school and then when he actually started practice. What was your experience with that?
So my experience, as with everyone here, I studied and worked full time. So when I first started, which I feel incredibly old in saying this, you used to file your court documents in person or by post. That is now online. Mediations, court always had to be in person. That can now be online. Witnessing of documents, it used to be you had to be in person, you had to be physically there, and again, that can also be done remotely. So I think the difference is thinking that this was an old style career that had that history and that all of those elements were going to be kept. But the reality is that it has really moved forward with the times and we've embraced technology. So I think that's a significant difference for me in my very long career.
What about for you, Nick? What have been the things that have stood out to you that was different to perhaps what you expected when you put your finger on the ad and said, right, that one will do?
Probably dealing with sort of the amount of interaction that you have with clients and them putting, as I've become sort of older and learnt more, the amount of trust they put in you seems to have increased a lot. They see you as a sort of an advisor and someone to pick up the phone to, even maybe not with a legal question. It's, you know, hey, I wanted to bounce something off you, or, you know, what do you think about this? And you know straight away it's not a technical or a legal question per se. It's something that is, they see you as someone who is involved in their business on a daily or weekly basis. And they trust your sort of judgment from an overarching perspective, which is interesting and sort of something that's sort of crept up on me, but is really nice.
Yeah, for me, and it might surprise you to know, Ben, that I'm rather competitive. Have you picked that up?
No, that's a surprise to me completely.
So for me, it was learning that you're not always going to win.
Yeah.
And that there's not always a black and white, this is the winner and this is the loser. And also that the journey on matters are not always going to be perfect. And I can remember we had a girl who worked with us for a while she was studying law, and her dad was a builder. Prior to coming to us, she'd helped her dad out in his business, and she said, it astounds me that you lawyers are such perfectionists, and the minute something looks like it's slightly not going to go your way, you just, have a little meltdown about it. She said, because builders, it's about project management and expecting that things are going to happen that aren't anticipated and are unexpected, and that you'll know how to deal with that, and you'll start dealing with it in the first instance. And I know that, but also helping clients to know it, because clients have a very high expectation of it's black and white, you're going to win, it's going to be an absolute victory, and it's going to be perfect on the way through. Whereas every matter, you are often responding to the other person's position or the other person's intention, and you've got to be able to continue to segue and be agile and giving clients advice. Well, this is a little bit different to what we expected, so now we can do 1, 2 and 3. But when I first came to the practice of law, I just thought, nope, it's going to win every time. And Nick and I, we have a joke, don't we, because we both have done limited court appearances, and so I think I'm 3 for 3. I won all 3 of mine. and I'll stop
Retire
while I'm
now.
ahead. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. So Nick, what makes for a good client-lawyer relationship for you?
Trust, both ways. Openness in a client telling me everything that they know about a matter. It's really important in terms of us being able to then give the correct advice, provide timeframes that are accurate for things getting done.
Yep.
If we only know half the information, then
Yep.
it's very hard to do that, and generally, we work on often very tight timeframes. There's a lot of pressure on us, and so it's important from a client perspective. They want to know up front how long is this going to take, and so
Yep, that's
if
right.
we only know sort of half the story or half the information, estimates of how long things will take can differ.
I feel like saying exactly ditto to that. That's exactly in terms of communication and timely communication, being upfront, managing expectations. There's no point saying that something's going to take 6 months when the reality is it's going to be 18 months to 3 years. My timeframes are a lot longer than your times because of being in litigation from commencement of proceedings all the way through to a hearing. And COVID's had a significant impact on that. So if I see a client and I say we're going to get you an outcome within 6 months, the reality is because of the impacts of COVID, those timeframes have substantially blown out. And having a client that has that unrealistic expectation at the outset doesn't bode well for a relationship throughout the course of something that they do have to trust you throughout, and they have to listen to your advice. They don't necessarily have to follow that advice. But for them to have that trust in that this person has my back, they understand the complexities of my matter, and they've got my best interests at heart. So creating that relationship is definitely important. But yes, Nick stole my answer.
How about for you, Ben? What has made for the good relationships you've had on matters so far?
Well, in a similar vein to what Nick and Sharnie have said, it always helps both sides, the lawyer and the client, have a role to play in making sure the matter progresses efficiently. Part of that is being open and telling everything that's happening in the background. We can do the law, but we can't do that without knowing all the background information. And even in my short career, comparatively, I have seen it when we've gone up to court and someone hasn't told the whole story and it comes out unravelling in front of you, and it's a lot harder to deal with it then rather than if it could have been addressed earlier on. So that's the important thing, to make sure you're open and be clear on what the goals are, what the expectations are, and importantly what challenges are going to be faced on the way, because as you said, it's not just you're going to win, you've got to address all the issues along the way. So trying to identify what those might be early on, and as long as if both parties can work together in each of their responsibilities in that department, then that makes for a good experience because everyone knows what's expected and can cohesively work together to have it move forward efficiently.
And that's probably the working together is key, because there's often not often, but there can be a misconception with clients who haven't used lawyers before, which is, hey, here's my matter, there it is, tell me when it's finished or something like that, which is rarely the case. There are many touch points where lawyers say, hey, here's your legal options, but you need to make a decision. And so for people just understanding that expectation as well, which circles back around to let's be upfront. What do you need? What outcome do you want? So we can sort of provide that advice and set realistic expectations.
I agree, and I think that respect, when I look at the different relationships that perhaps haven't run as smoothly as I would have liked them to, and the clients would have liked them to over the years, I think that you really have to maintain that respect. And with clients, we acknowledge that they're here with us because they are in a very, very stressful period of their life. Either stressful because they're under threat because they're being sued or they're in litigation, stressful because of the anticipation of, I really want this to happen and don't make this hard, you just do what needs to be done and get this through for me. And just stressful because they might have lost a loved one. It's very common, and we recognise it when clients are sitting with us that they're in that stress sort of mindset, but there needs to be respect. And if there's respect, which also touches on trust, then I find that makes the transaction and the experience much easier for us and for clients, and also clients listening to the advice and considering the advice, because a lot of the time we have to give clients advice that isn't actually what they want to hear. Right. And one of the things that I see go wrong when we pick up matters from other lawyers is that the lawyer hasn't actually said to the client, stop, this is not going to work for these reasons, and or the client's not listening to the advice. And I can remember we had a litigation matter years ago now, and I had the senior barrister and the litigation lawyer on the phone until 10 o'clock at night saying, you've got to get this client to settle because he's got a fantastic settlement offer on the table, and if he doesn't take it, things are not going to be better than this. Client was adamant, nope, not settling, and then cost him $900,000 more because he ended up settling 2 days later when things weren't quite as good as what he'd expected. So we've touched on one of the things that makes it difficult for us is when clients aren't being completely open with us and telling us everything. And in my experience, there can be different layers to that. There can be clients, I've had clients who have outright tried to mislead me or manipulate the matter by giving me a select set of instructions or facts because they are thinking, if you think this and you go on that path, then I'll get this outcome. And touching on what Ben said, I've had, back when I did a bit of litigation, I was sitting in court, personal injury matter, and one of the big things that we'd put in all of our evidence and pleadings was the fact that our client could not play a particular sport that was his life anymore. So he's getting cross-examined by the insurer's solicitor, and the insurer's solicitor said, so how was such and such a day on such and such a date for you? It was a nice sunny day, wasn't it? And I'm looking at the barrister and I'm thinking, And he says, the solicitor says, that was the day you won the grand final. And the barrister's going to me, don't react, don't do anything, just keep a poker face on, because the client had, and the insurance had, video footage of him playing in grand finals and everything. And again, that was a several $100,000 omission. So you can mislead us by omission as much
was
as
it a
you
lawn
can.
bowls grand final?
I'm not
talking
going
rugby
to
league or
say
something
it was
like that?
it was a sport somewhere in between those
Got
two.
ya.
We could have we didn't need that. We didn't need to build our case on that piece, and wouldn't have, and still would have got a good outcome. So what other skills do good lawyers bring to the table apart from just their knowledge of law? Nick?
Good lawyers are good communicators, and by communication, probably timeliness of communication, and the ability to decode what lots of people see as lawyer language or legal language into something that is easily understood or better understood by a client. I think that's probably the key things.
So, not speaking Latin perhaps?
I don't know any Latin.
I
grew up.
I
did. I'm sorry. I do know what Latin is, but and I have had a few phrases, but I don't use it. But that's something that there was when I was sort of started. We used to use it all the time. Or lawyers used to use it all the time.
I came through in the Latin phase where there was, res ipsa loquitur and all sorts of stuff. But I received a letter from a lawyer in Tamworth one day, and I'm looking at the letter and I'm thinking, I don't know any of this Latin in this letter. So I went into one of the partners at the time and I said to him, you like to use lots of Latin, what does this mean? And he said, oh, that's not Latin, because this particular lawyer was putting lots of Italian in his letter. So Sharnie, touching on what Nick said in terms of good communicators, one of the things that I am very focused on and encourage all of our lawyers to do is be committed to lifelong learning. And I, for example, have qualified as a mediator, and I use those skills, even though I don't do a lot of mediation work, every day in negotiating with clients and that type of thing. You and I have both done postgraduate studies in insolvency. I've done a specialist accreditation in business. I think that, and I've done a lot of studies around business practices and business principles and that type of thing. So I think that all of that is really important. Good lawyers are continually upskilling and, learning new skills. But Sharnie, what should a client consider when they're choosing a lawyer? What's important to that relationship?
Definitely the expertise in the area, the subject matter. So at Aubrey Brown, we all specialise. We have our different departments, and those are the matters that we work in, day out. So if a matter comes in that is a purchase of a sale or a business, that's not something that I would do. That's something that Nick's team would do. So I think it is important for a client to understand the knowledge base of the lawyer that they're engaging and making sure that they've got the experience in that particular subject matter. Having that initial conference with the lawyer and the client so that the client can ask those questions, and so they can have that level of comfort that those questions that they have are being answered in a way, like with a confidence that the lawyer knows what they're talking about. They've got the experience of, oh, well, I had a matter 3 years ago that had similar circumstances and this was the outcome that we saw. So I do think that asking those questions and doing a little bit of research in the background to see what skill set and what practice areas the lawyer practices in.
And I think as well, one of the things that is really good in our practice is we are very collaborative, and often, even though we're in our specialised areas and teams, we're constantly in and out of each other's office, bouncing things around. We'll bring lawyers in from different disciplines so clients can have the people in the room that can help them, and I think that that's something that works really well and helps us to get really good outcomes for clients.
Okay.
Well, we've run out of time. So Ben, did you have any final words?
No, I think you've pretty much covered on what you want to look for when you're getting a lawyer and what makes it work. So, yeah.
Well, thank you to the three of you for coming along today and sharing your views on what it's like being a lawyer and what it's like working with a lawyer. And thank you for watching our final episode in this series of Law in Life. Please share it with your friends, share it on social media, and we thank you